Midnight news coming to you live from Algiers. I'm your host, Mariam Zian, and here are your top stories for tonight. Death toll rises to 33,899 in the Gaza Strip as Zionist bombing continues, and 6 massacres were reported in the past 24 hours. Next on Palestinian Prisoners Day, over 9,000 Palestinians are detained by the Zionist occupation forces while retaliatory arrests escalate. Also coming up, Algeria pledges $15 million in support to UNRWA amidst Israeli campaigns. And Algerian Foreign Minister urges collective action for Mediterranean youth amidst regional challenges. Welcome back to the program. Palestinian Health Ministry in the Gaza Strip said that the number of dead and wounded as a result of the ongoing Zionist bombing has risen to 33,899 martyrs and 76,664 injured since the 7th of last October. The same source added that the occupation committed 6 massacres in the Strip during the past 24 hours. This comes as Palestinian authorities in Gaza and international bodies say about 85% of the Strip's population has been displaced. Director General of the World Health Organization, Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus, described the extent of the destruction caused to hospitals in the Gaza Strip as a result of the Zionist aggression as tragic, reiterating the demand to protect hospitals and not attack or militarize them. Ghebreyesus said in a post on his account on the social networking app X that the international organization, in cooperation with its partners, conducted an assessment of the conditions in Al-Shifa and in Indonesian hospitals in northern Gaza, stressing that the process of recovering bodies in the Al-Shifa hospital is still ongoing. And Qatari Prime Minister and Foreign Minister Sheikh Mohammed bin Abdul Rahman Al Thani has revealed that the ceasefire discussions in Gaza, as well as efforts towards detainee release, are going through a delicate phase. He emphasized ongoing attempts to overcome these hurdles and alleviate the plight of hundreds of thousands of civilians in the region. Al Thani also condemned the killing of civilians and the continuation of collective punishment by the occupation.
The negotiations as well as the region are passing through a delicate phase. The state of Qatar had a clear position since the start of these events on October the 7th. We condemn the targeting and killing of civilians, whatever their backgrounds, but also it is not allowed to continue Israel's policy of collective punishment towards the Palestinian people in Gaza and the ongoing escalation in the West Bank.
Every year, April 17 marks Palestinian Prisoners Day, a day dedicated to the thousands of Palestinian prisoners in Israeli jails. Campaigners use the day to call for the human rights of such prisoners to be upheld and for those who have been detained without charge to be released. This year, the Zionist occupation forces escalated their retaliatory behavior by arresting Palestinians in parallel with the genocidal war in Gaza, which raised the number of the detainees to more than 9,000, including women and children who face the worst forms of torture and violence.
There are over 9,500 Palestinian detainees, including women, in Israeli jails, in addition to more than 2,000 detainees who are being forcibly hidden in the Niqab Desert in the Gaza Strip, notably in the prison and camp of Sidi Diman, located in the Niqab Desert. The Palestinian prisoners are living in hard conditions inside the Israeli prisons and jails. Over 8,500 Palestinian detainees were arrested after October 7 in the West Bank and more than 2,000 in the Gaza Strip.
Italy has called on the Israeli occupation to halt its military operations in Gaza, emphasizing the urgent need for a ceasefire in the region. Italian Foreign Minister Antonio Tajani stressed the significant impact of occupation operations on Palestinians in Gaza. These remarks come ahead of a meeting of foreign ministers from the Group of Seven hosted by Italy, where discussions on the situation in Gaza are expected to take place.
I think we are open. We need to decide.
The UN Security Council will convene an open session to discuss the challenges confronting the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestine Refugees, UNRWA. Commissioner General Philippe Lazzarini will brief Council members on the deteriorating humanitarian situation in Gaza and UNRWA's efforts to provide essential services amidst conflict. The meeting is anticipated to shed light on the critical implications of the conflict on UNRWA's operations. The head of the United Nations Office for the Coordinator of Humanitarian Affairs of the Occupied Palestinian Territories, Andrea Di Domenico, said that aid deliveries inside Gaza are facing major delays at checkpoints. The UN official indicated that during the past week, 41% of the requests submitted by the United Nations to deliver aid to the northern Gaza were rejected, warning of the repercussions of such actions.
We cannot, accept, and we're dealing with this dance where we do one step forward, two step backward, or two step forward and one step backward, which leave us basically always at the same point with the new, for every new opportunity that we've been given, we will find yet another challenge to deal with. So it's really, really difficult for us to scale up where we would like to be at the humanitarian operations. The looming famine that, as you might have read a few weeks back, it has been. We keep on discussing with the Israeli Authority. They promised better coordination with Southern Command, and some progress was made here, but still there is not. We are not where we should be. Hopefully, we will continue and pursue our engagement at trying to get there. Opening the crossing directly to the north was one of the critical requests that we have done.
After Algeria put a draft resolution requesting full membership for Palestine in the United Nations as a last technical measure, a vote on the draft resolution is expected by members of the UN Security Council today, Thursday. This shows once again Algerian efforts in support of the Palestinian cause after insisting on intensifying diplomatic efforts to mobilize the international group in favor of the Palestinian cause. Nabil Khazini has more details.
The national flag of Algeria.
When the Algerian flag was raised at the UN Security Council, Palestine was on top of Algeria's priorities. Algeria promised and kept its word. From the moment Algeria held its non-permanent seat in the Security Council, it immediately started to defend Palestine. And now, Algeria put in blue a draft resolution in the Security Council advocating for the admission of the State of Palestine as a fully fledged member of the United Nations. This means negotiations for a draft resolution have reached their final stage.
وأكرر مع تجديد المطالبة بعقد جمعية عامة استثنائية بمنح دولة فلسطين العضوية الكاملة في الجمعية العامة للأمم المتحدة.
This move reflects the culmination of diplomatic efforts led by Algerian diplomacy under the guidance of President Abdelmadjid Tebboune, which aim to secure widespread support for Palestine to obtain full UN membership. Years after Palestine was granted partial membership and held observer status, Palestine is now moving again towards securing its legitimate place within the international community. It is estimated that 2/3 of the members of the Security Council supports full membership for the Palestinian state. However, it is highly likely that the United States will veto it.
Within the framework of his work and visit to New York, Algerian Foreign Minister Mr. Ahmed Attaf held on Wednesday at the United Nations headquarters a bilateral meeting with the special envoy of the Palestinian president and member of the Central Committee of the Palestine Liberation Organization, Zayed Abu Ammar. During this meeting, the two parties discussed the latest developments related to the Palestinian issue, especially those that mean full membership of the State of Palestine in the United Nations and the conditions for reviving the peace process in the Middle East, in addition to the post-war Gaza governance project. Algerian Foreign Minister Ahmed Attaf also met with UNRWA Commissioner General Philippe Lazzarini. During the meeting, Minister Attaf renewed to the UNRWA Commissioner Algeria's continued support for this agency and its indispensable role in supporting Palestinian refugees, especially in light of the current Israeli campaigns aimed at eliminating them. On the occasion, Mr. Attaf announced that Algeria, under the instruction of the President of the Republic, will grant a $15 million worth contribution to UNRWA.
The President of the Republic, Mr. Al-Jid Tebboune, have proclaimed that there will be an exceptional financial contribution, $15 million. This money will go to UNRWA. This is an exceptional, an extraordinary contribution which will go on top, which will come on top of Algeria's other contributions, which have been provided directly to the Palestinian Authority. We believe that we are truly duty-bound, that we have a responsibility to honor this pledge, and the same can be said for other members of the international community. We are unswervingly convinced that UNRWA must continue its work as long as there are Palestine refugees. And in fact, the return of Palestine refugees is an inalienable right.
Algerian Foreign Minister Ahmed Attaf also held bilateral talks with the UN Special Coordinator for the Middle East peace process, Tor Wennesland. During the meeting, the two parties stressed the necessity of accelerating the provision of the necessary conditions to revive the peace process in accordance with the resolutions of international legitimacy that guarantees and preserves the historical right of the Palestinian people to establish their independent state with Al-Quds as its capital. Algerian Foreign Minister Ahmed Attaf said that the unjust aggression perpetrated against the Palestinians for more than half a year is a new chapter in the Israeli attempts to obliterate the history of the oldest issue in the region and in the history of the United Nations. During a speech at Security Council discussion on the pivotal role of youth in confronting security challenges in the Mediterranean region, Mr. Attaf stressed that the Palestinian youth are deprived from the right to live safely and decently.
It is also enough to mention our people in the occupied Palestinian territories and the unjust aggression they have been subjected to for over half a year. This is simply a new chapter in Israel's continued and repeated attempt to eliminate one of the oldest crises and one of the oldest issues in our region and in our organization. The people of Palestine, the youth of Palestine today, do not have the right to dream of a safe life and a dignified life. They no longer have the right to aspire to an education. They no longer have the right to dream of building a future and building their country, which was taken from them. Thousands of them no longer have the right to grow up into young men and women because the hands of the Israeli occupation have persisted in reaping their lives as children and infants.
In other developments, Iranian President Ibrahim Raisi warned that his country will respond broadly and painfully to any targeting. Raisi added that his country will respond to the slightest act targeting Iranian interests. The Iranian president also said that the blind support provided by some Western countries to the Zionist entity provides a basis for tensions in the region.
If the tiniest invasion is made by the Zionist regime against our homeland or our interests, they must be certain that they will face a very massive and harsh response.
European Union leaders met on Wednesday to discuss stepping up sanctions against Iran after Tehran's missile and drone attack on the Zionist entity. This came following the U.S. House of Representatives supported a bill establishing a law that grants the U.S. president the authority to impose harsh sanctions against the Iranian economy.
One thing is very clear. We have already taken many steps to sanction Iran. It will have to be discussed again and again what further steps are possible. It is also clear that these are processes that need to be closely monitored. There is already a list of sanctions imposed by these powers, and it is now a question of whether we can take a further step, a three-pronged approach, so to speak, although this is tied to legal procedures that the Commission's legal service is now dealing with.
The Algerian President's Supreme Commander of the Armed Forces and Minister of National Defense, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune, chaired a meeting of the Supreme Security Council on Wednesday, as announced by the Presidency of the Republic. And Algerian Foreign Minister Mr. Ahmed Attaf said that the Mediterranean region, like other regions, is witnessing crises and conflicts that depend on the achievement of peace and security there, noting that the Mediterranean region has become vulnerable to the repercussions of many cross-border and transnational scourges. During a speech at a Security Council discussion on the pivotal role of youth in confronting security challenges in the Mediterranean region, Mr. Attaf stressed that the rapid developments put the youth of the Mediterranean region at the heart of the current problems, calling for the adoption of a collective approach that lives up to the ambitions and aspirations of the youth of the Mediterranean region.
The Mediterranean basin, which is the crossroads of the greatest civilizations in human history, has now become subject to many cross-border problems, and those are manifest in terrorist threats and related crime, be it organized crime or violent crime, not to mention the increased threat posed by climate change, which has become a part of daily life that can no longer be hidden or denied. Add to all these challenges the challenge of illegal migration in the Mediterranean, which still awaits from the countries of the region coordinated responses that are of the same importance and seriousness of this phenomenon, including a way to deal with this burden that is being put upon the countries of origin and transit and destination equally. These developments place the youth of the Mediterranean at the heart of the current problem.
The Algerian Foreign Minister added that the approach advocated by Algeria is based on the rules of international legitimacy and provides for the necessity of a balanced partnership among the countries, the two shores of the Mediterranean. Let's have a listen.
Here we note the urgent need to develop and adopt a collective approach that will rise up to the level of our youth's expectations and ambition. It is an approach that Algeria is calling for in accordance with a renewed vision that responds to a set of urgent requirements.
Algerian Foreign Minister Mr. Ahmed Attaf received at the premises of the Algerian mission to the United Nations the UN Secretary General's Special Representative for Libya, Abdoulaye Batili, after he submitted his latest report to the Security Council and submitted his resignation. A statement by the Algerian Foreign Ministry explained that Minister Attaf praised during the meeting the efforts and endeavors initiated by Batili during his term in office to contribute to bring in the views of the Libyan parties closer together and to enable the state of Libya to turn a new leaf on the crisis once and for all. UN envoy to Libya Abdullah Batili resigned from his position, citing the prioritization of personal interests over national needs by Libyan officials. This decision follows a grim portrayal of Libya's situation during Batili's briefing to the Security Council. Hossan Berkam provides you with more details.
The United Nations envoy to Libya, Abdoulaye Batili, submitted his resignation, considering that the peaceful efforts made by the United Nations organization will remain doomed to failure as long as leaders of this country put their personal interest above the needs of their country. Batili's resignation underscores the entrenched political deadlock in Libya, where leaders have failed to prioritize the country's interest over their own. Despite extensive efforts by the UN mission under Batili's leadership, recent months have seen deterioration in the situation, with Libyan leaders showing a lack of political will and good faith.
Since the end of 2022, the United Nations led efforts to help resolve Libya's political crisis through elections, faced national as well as regional pushbacks, revealing an intentional defiance to engage in earnest and a tenacity to perpetually delay elections.
The political dialogue has stalled for months, with key leaders disagreeing on the roadmap to elections. The Eastern camp advocates for a new unified government to prepare for elections, while the Western camp insists on fair electoral laws before proceeding. Many Libyans view these disputes as maneuvers to prolong their stay in power and delay elections. Batili's resignation marks the 9th change in UN envoy to Libya since 2011, highlighting the challenges of achieving consensus and progress in the country's political process. Despite international efforts, bringing Libyan leaders together for meaningful negotiations remain elusive, hindering the path of elections and ending the transitional phase.
Unas Magraman, the Secretary General of the Algerian Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and Admiral Robert Bauer, the Chairman of the NATO Military Committee, discussed on Wednesday the partnership between Algeria and NATO and ways to enhance it to meet the expectations of both parties. A statement from the Algerian Ministry of Foreign Affairs noted that Magraman hosted Bauer, who is on a 2-day working visit to Algeria as part of a NATO representative tour of partner countries in the Mediterranean dialogue. They discussed international and regional topics of mutual interest, including challenges in the Mediterranean basin, the Sahel region, and developments related to the Palestinian issue.
I'm here in Algeria on invitation of the government of Algeria because of a long-standing partnership that Algeria has with NATO. We are now looking into energy security, into cybersecurity, and into countering terrorism. So those are areas where we work together with Algeria, and we will continue to do so.
The Secretary General of the Algerian Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Lounes Magraman, received also South Korea's Deputy Minister for Climate Change, Hyun Kim, on Wednesday during his visit to Algeria. The two parties discussed different aspects of cooperation between Algeria and South Korea and explored ways to strengthen their strategic partnership that has been in place since 2006. The meeting also provided an opportunity for the two officials, who have both recently joined the Security Council as non-permanent members, to share perspectives and align their positions on various regional and international matters of mutual interest. Member states of the United Nations Security Council stressed the need to achieve a peaceful, just and lasting solution to the conflict in Western Sahara, which guarantees the Sahrawi people's rights to the self-determination on the basis of relevant United Nations resolutions. During a closed consultation session held by the Security Council on the MINURSO mission, Council members listened to a briefing by Staffan de Mistura, personal envoy of the Secretary General of the United Nations, and Alexander Ivanko, special representative of the Secretary General and head of the MINURSO mission. Member states of the Council also affirmed that MINURSO must fully implement its mandate by holding a referendum on self-determination of the Sahrawi people. In this context, the representative of the Polisario Front at the United Nations praised Algeria's position in support of the Sahrawi people's struggle for freedom and independence, stressing that it stems from its permanent respect for the resolutions of international legitimacy. Let's take a listen.
The position underlined today by the Algerian foreign minister during his meeting with Mr. Staffan de Mistura and then during his meeting with a high-ranking U.S. official is a firm position stemming from Algeria's advocacy for the respect of UN resolutions that clearly define the two parties to the conflict, namely the Popular Front for the Liberation of Sagia al-Hamra and Rio de Oro and the occupying Moroccan state.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have come to an end of this program. Thank you for watching. Take care and bye-bye.